Tesla has finally received the long-awaited full self-driving approval in China. This coming following Musk's surprise visit to Beijing this weekend. And joining us now for more on what this means for the EV maker, let's welcome in Wedbush Managing Director and Senior Equity Analyst Dan Ives. Dan, it is always great to have you on the show. So I'm looking at this stock, Dan. It is just roaring higher on this headline. Let's start there, Dan. Does that reaction make sense to you?
I think it makes complete sense. Because look, Josh, this is a watershed moment. For Musk to get FSD in China, it's a game changer. This is something years in the making. No investor thought this was going to happen for the next year. He gets back on that plane from Beijing, drinking mimosas. This was a trophy case win.
Dan, why though? Because all of the other electric vehicle makers that are already competing with Tesla in China, they already have autonomous driving capabilities that have already existed. There's been, of course, price wars going on in China and stiff competition from those other electric vehicle makers. If I'm a Chinese consumer and I'm thinking about buying a car, is FSD really the thing that's going to be pushing me over the edge to buy a Tesla versus a BYD or another car?
Yeah, it's a great question, Julie. I'd say there's two reasons why this is so important. One, FSD, the autonomous vision, number one, in our opinion, being Tesla over the coming years, they needed China. In terms of just from a data perspective, when you think from an AI angle what they're doing, they needed China.
But we don't know if they can use, but sorry to interrupt, Dan, we don't know if they can actually, how they can use that data, right?
Well, yet. But ultimately, if you look what Musk's been able to do, remember years ago they said he'd never be able to build a factory in China. Now look at Giga. The point is, they need Tesla as much as Tesla needs China because it's the trophy case. You look at Apple, you look at Tesla, two of the best brands in the world. That's why they allowed this, with Baidu as a partner. And the reason it's so important is that Tesla almost had one hand behind its back not having FSD in China. Now they have that. And I believe what's starting to get factored in here is a demand. I'm not saying the next week or two, a demand recovery in China. Look, betting against Musk, it's like betting against Brunson in the playoffs.
Last week has been an exciting week for Tesla stock investors, and perhaps the main highlights from it were Elon Musk's surprise visit to China and the country approving the launch of FSD on its streets, though we don't know an exact release date yet. Tesla stock surged as much as 18% thanks to this visit, before it dropped again to around $180 thanks to news of more layoffs at Tesla, but this wasn't enough to turn major institutions like Wedbush and Morgan Stanley against the EV giant. In fact, Morgan Stanley analysts recently released a note that indicated their extreme bullishness on Tesla stock, and they also set an insane price target. In this video, we're going to go over why Morgan Stanley is so bullish on Tesla and what the investment bank's managing director, Adam Jonas, had to say about Tesla's future prospects. But before we do that, if you want to keep up with Tesla's latest updates and keep up with the stock market's latest news, you can follow our Twitter account. We post multiple times daily about the biggest changes and catalysts in the market, so click the follow button if you don't want to miss the newest market updates. Now, back to today's video.
Shares of Tesla sharply higher today, up 15% at the moment as the company passed a major milestone in China. Chinese regulators removing restrictions on the EV maker's advanced driver assistance technology after passing the country's data security requirements. As part of that deal, China's Baidu will provide mapping for Tesla. Those shares also higher on the news. And we should note this news coming on the heels of Elon Musk's surprise trip to China, where he met with the Chinese premier in Beijing on Sunday. For more on how significant this is to Tesla and to the stock going forward, I'm joined by Tom Narayan, the lead equity analyst at RBC Autos at RBC Capital. Tom, good to see you. So I get conceptually why this is a big deal. The part that I don't get yet, maybe you can help me with, is how relevant is the existing U.S. data in training for Chinese full self-driving, or regionally is this completely separate training? Because I imagine, data you get training in Des Moines isn't going to be that great in New York City, right? We drive different in different places in this world.
Yes and no. So what we've learned from FSD in the U.S. is the highway driving is already as good as it's going to get. It's amazing. The difficult part is the urban environments. And what we've noticed from urban environments in China is that they actually are pretty similar to urban environments in the United States. And the other thing I would note is, remember, the Chinese, it's a central government authority that wants this to happen, that wants to have level 2+ and potentially more robotaxis, et cetera. So there is a more likelihood that we'll get to autonomy faster, actually, in China than there will be in the US. So while, like, rural areas, highways may be somewhat different, that part is not the difficult part. It's really the urban environments. And in the dense urban environments in China, it's actually not as different as what we have in the US.
So far, we've seen Wedbush's Dan Ives and RBC Capital's Tom Narayan being bullish on Tesla stock because of the approval of FSD in China. But what did Morgan Stanley have to say about this news? It's no surprise that Elon Musk's recent visit to China sparked significant interest and optimism from analysts at Morgan Stanley, who declared he's back in a recent note to its clients. The bank said that while the trip was clearly aimed at securing approval for Tesla's FSD software in China, the implications of it actually run deeper. In fact, Morgan Stanley analysts suggest that Elon's visit to China is a clear sign of his renewed commitment to Tesla, which is incredible news for investors as many were starting to worry about him getting distracted with his other companies. Additionally, Elon's compensation package being rejected by a Delaware judge was seen as a massive setback for Tesla, and now as the company renews the fight to get him the package, Elon is addressing investor concerns by going all in on FSD expansion all around the world. Not only that, but Morgan Stanley believes the symbolism of Elon's unannounced visit to China resonates strongly, signaling his dedication not just to Tesla, but also to his broader ecosystem of companies. Analysts also added that Elon winning the blessing from the Chinese regulators for FSD rollout in China is the perfect way to address the concerns over Tesla's performance in the country, as many analysts and investors were worried about how Tesla will manage amid more price wars and aggressive competition from Chinese EV makers. They also highlighted how Tesla is the perfect example of the convergence of AI and robotics, stating that any advances the company makes when it comes to large language models could benefit both Tesla's self-driving cars and humanoid robots. While analysts agree that FSD launching in China will benefit Tesla greatly, they still highlighted the potential national security implications of Elon's dealings in China, given his involvement in missions with SpaceX and various US government agencies. Then they ended the note saying that they're bullish on Tesla's technological advancements, maintaining their overweight rating and $310 price target on Tesla stock, and that's a massive upside of 77% as of the time of this video. Now, let's get into what Adam Jonas had to say about Tesla after trying FSD for himself, and some of Tesla's new developments that will convince you to keep holding onto your Tesla shares for years to come. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Investocracy.
And Dan, I'm interested why you think, China decided to, in fact, greenlight this tech. Do you think it's because, officials over there, Dan, maybe they just believe that FSD is ultimately relatively safer over the long term? Do you think they were trying to extend maybe an olive branch to the U.S. as tensions are running hot? What are the reasons you think they greenlit this?
Yeah, I think it's all the above. And you have the most followed human in the world in Musk. And Musk being in Beijing, not just a photo op, that's what China wants. China wants that relationship to increase, just like they do with Apple as well. And when you look at FSD, they're going to double down on that. And you cannot double down on FSD if Tesla is not involved. And that's why I think Musk went there on the surprise visit this weekend. And he comes back with just a huge win.
Dan, so Tesla's sales in China were down almost 4% in the first quarter, while the rest of the market there was growing. And I know you sort of cautioned that this is more of a long-term story, but do we see a turnaround in the fortunes of China sales for Tesla this year?
Look, I think you're going to start to see what I believe. I'm not saying the next month, but as we get in the second half of the year, I think you see a rebound in China sales. And I think Tesla has a number of things up their sleeves that they're going to introduce in China, which will be significant. And it goes back to, as someone that's been in the region many times, massive competition, such impressive, vehicles that you see there from OEMs. But there's one Tesla. And at the end of the day, you're going to see a lot of consumers. They want to be driving a Tesla, not just in China, but in the US, Europe. And that's why I believe they are just going through a digestion period. The growth story is not done at Tesla.
Adam Jonas recently shared his own experience when using FSD, and it's one of the reasons why he sees an upside of nearly 80% for Tesla stock. He said that he has been using FSD version 12.3 heavily over the past few weeks, and on April 28th, he used it for more than 70 miles of driving in New York. He said that he had FSD engaged for 90% of the day's driving and called the system a pleasure to use, and said that it reduced his overall fatigue level while driving. Despite this, he believes that Tesla still has a long way to go before the steering wheel is removed from its self-driving cars, implying that he doesn't really see robotaxis taking off anytime soon, adding that transparency with the safety data with third-party validation will be a critical milestone for advancing deployment. It's very clear that the majority of Tesla bulls agree on one thing, and that is the fact that FSD is the future. The technology will add a lot to Tesla's long-term value, and Elon knows this very well, which is why he's seeking to expand with FSD to other countries. It's important to note that Tesla China said it was difficult to say when FSD would be released in China, but said it could launch quickly in the not-too-distant future. But that doesn't mean all the excitement is over for Tesla China, as there are new reports saying that Tesla's robotaxi may first start testing and operating in Hangzhou, which is the capital of China's Zhejiang province. This is because Hangzhou became the first city in China to use local legislation to clearly define the specific process for operating autonomous vehicles, as well as the first city in China to enact legislation for low-speed autonomous vehicles. Elon basically confirmed that the robotaxi story will start in China with the unveiling date, as 8/8 is actually a lucky number in China. But China isn't the only country FSD is trying to enter. In fact, a recent rumor came out saying that preparations for the introduction of FSD are currently underway in South Korea. Interestingly, the Tesla app software upgrade tab has been changed to FSD driving in the country. Additionally, the same thing with the app happened in Europe and Germany, where Tesla is apparently giving regulators demos of FSD. All of this is more the reason to get excited about Tesla stock, and in my opinion, FSD will dominate the entire world in the next few years. If you made it this far into the video, thank you. These videos take a lot of effort and time to make, so if you enjoyed them, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. This goes a long way in helping us grow. That said, back to the video.
Does this end up helping Tesla longer term with what might be seen as a margin problem, right? There have been all these price cuts as Chinese EV competitors are going up against Tesla. Do you think Tesla is going to license this technology to others within China and therefore make margin whether they're selling hardware or not? Or are they going to keep this internal Apple style and use it to try to justify selling their cars either at higher prices or getting a government subsidy if they can prove through data that it is safer?
Yeah, and I'll just want to point out, I've had FSD and Robotaxi together worth like 70 to 80% of my price target for a long time now, almost a year. So it's not only it is the margin, right? It's the software business subscription. My model has it at $50 a month, and they've lowered it from 200 to 100. Just imagine when you put the gross margins on a software product, the multiple you can get. So part of it's the valuation you get from re-rating the stock as a tech company, a software company. The other aspect, exactly what you pointed out, is the margin story. And we've seen what's happened with auto margins coming down. They probably will come down some more with the new affordable car. But it doesn't matter if you can slap on an amazing subscription on it that gets you a higher margin. So if we can see margins overall in aggregate slowly creep up because of FSD take rate, and we're hearing already the version 12 free trial was a smashing success, then that translates into greater margins overall. You'll definitely see the narrative for Tesla change from being a car company to something obviously much, much more.
RBC Capital's Tom Narayan has a $293 price target on Tesla stock, which is around a 60% upside from where the stock is trading now. Narayan repeated some of Elon Musk's longtime points about FSD, saying that FSD is 5 times safer than a regular car, and soon enough, it could eventually become mandated by regulators as a life-saving tool. In his most recent note to RBC clients, he talked about how some investors were worried about Chinese companies pirating the FSD software, but he brushes these concerns off, saying that FSD is way more than just a software. This is because it includes millions of hours of driving data from autopilot interactions and algorithm training, which happens in the United States. Additionally, RBC Capital believes that FSD taking off around the world could happen quicker than Tesla licensing FSD to other automakers, saying that the software accounts for 20% of their Tesla valuation after only assuming 8% market share. I completely agree with both Jonas and Narayan. Fully autonomous vehicles are the future of the industry, and Tesla is the only EV company that could really scale this technology and make it suitable for worldwide expansion and licensing deals. FSD will be everywhere in Tesla, from its cars and robotaxis to even its humanoid robots, so Elon betting everything on it should be a bullish sign for Tesla investors. That's why now might be the perfect time for investors who are interested in Tesla stock to load up on more shares, because at its current price, and with analysts upgrading Tesla stock each day, the stock looks cheap. But what are your thoughts on Tesla's FSD expansions? Is Tesla stock a buy now? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. If you would like to know what Tesla has been up to these past few days, then go ahead and click on the next video on your screen. See you there.